What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I am your host, Reckless Rex Ruger. Watching my back, as always, is the Freddie Mercury puppet. Do not be deceived. He is on high alert back there, man. Never asleep at the wheel. We are back with another amazing episode. I will address the elephant in the room. You're looking at the smoldering good looks, the luscious blonde locks. Yes, I will confirm for you that I am the one and only love child of one Diamond David Lee Roth. There. Now we have dispensed of the formalities and we can get down to business. And the business at hand, of course, is another banger of an episode of Pod Scum coming your way right now. I'm excited. You're excited. So we're going to get down to it. My guest should be on his way in here un momento. So I probably won't go into my promotional spiel like I normally would. There he is right there. So I can't even go into my promotional spiel because my guest is here. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well, man. Promote away, man. You do your thing.
Yeah, I often like to say that I'm pimping the podcast, man. And, you know, the pimp hand has to feel strong. You know what I mean? And you obviously can understand that as a podcaster yourself, which, by the way, you are extremely blessed to be able to call yours Talk To Me, man. Boy, thank your parents, man. Kudos on the last name, man. You've parlayed it well, my friend. You've parlayed it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's one thing that, I was... you kind of feel bad when you see like a metal this or a rock that, and you kind of want one of those cool names. But when I started the podcast 10 years ago now, it was either going to be Speak To Me or Talk To Me. And obviously I went with Talk To Me and it worked out.
Now, as a podcaster and also being a musician, man, how gratifying do you find it, as just a creative person in general, man? Obviously they're scratching two different itches, man, but like, what's that dynamic like, man? Like, do you find one at this point in your life more fulfilling than the other?
10 years ago when I started the podcast, I wasn't playing music at the time. I mean, obviously I'd been in primer and bands before that.
Right.
And then I was kind of in a lull and kind of working a crappy day job and listening to a lot of podcasts and kind of getting back into my fandom, because I grew up, as much as I've been in bands, I grew up a fan. I grew up more and I would go and meet bands, and I would go and in my teenage years, me and my friends would go and find the tour buses and be those kids that just sat outside in the hot sun all day waiting for someone to come off the bus and get an autograph, get a photo, ask a question, whatnot. And it's funny, I always, even back then, and this is like the mid 90s, like 94 to 97, somewhere in there. Yeah. I always wanted to try to find a question to ask the artist that wasn't a typical question, even back then. I didn't want to be like, oh, where'd you get the band name, or what made you want to play guitar? Which sometimes I've asked those questions on the podcast, but for the most part, I always try to find something a little bit more creative and more creative and more, just more in depth rather than just surface level stuff.
Right.
But what you're asking is, when the podcast kind of came around, I'd been out of music for a minute, and it kind of got me back into it, and it got me out of a rut of, just going back and listening to the same 10 records over and over and keeping up with what's going on and really learning about new music and not getting stunted in my musical growth, which I think a lot of people, in my advanced age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm just saying, like, all my friends seem to still kind of go back to those 10 records. They don't know anything coming up, and it kind of keeps you fresh and keeps you excited about new music and excited about what the the quote unquote kids are doing now. So with that being said, it kind of kept me going in my music fandom. It kind of kept the name Primer 55 kind of, just in the vernacular of a lot of people. It was crazy how many times over the years, post-interview, pre-interview, a guest would be like, dude, I listened to Primer in middle school or things like that. And even when Bobby kind of came for the last, I think 5 years or so, I'm like, dude, we got to do something. Obviously with Jason passing away, it's always been a tough one to do. Obviously tough to replace the singer, sure. Especially a voice like that. No offense to Donnie or whoever has come into the band. Jason was such a presence and such a voice that is hard to replace, because he could scream, he could sing, he could rap. You know, he
Right.
kind of had all the boxes checked. But yeah, with all of that said, I mean, within the last couple of years, I started playing here locally with kind of a group of local musicians that get together and do they do like Louisville Loves Emo or Louisville Loves New Metal, where it's kind of like a karaoke thing, but we have a set list, play it exactly how it is on the record, and have kind of a rotating thing of singers. And that, like, I would say I got on stage with them like 2 years ago to like a sold out show, like 400 or 500 kids.
Wow.
And I was just like, and even my wife, she goes, I've never seen you smile like that. you know, and that's I'm like, I'm sorry, baby. She's like, no, it's a different kind of smile. It's like you were like in your element. So I've been doing that. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but with Primer kind of popping back up.
Yep.
I've played more bass in the last couple of months than I probably did, back when I should have been playing more bass. Because I just did another show where I had to learn like 16 songs, and I'm going back over the Primer, the first album plus
Right.
the songs we're going to play on the second album. So it's just been a smorgasbord of bass. It's like, because we're playing different styles and everything else, and just having to learn. I actually had to learn a Creed song, for God's sake. It's been a pretty wild few months, man.
But it is nice to hear that you have that spirit, though, man. I mean, like, it is nice, because I think all musicians, obviously, at their core, are fans. You know what I mean? So, like, to have it be so authentic, you know what I mean, and wear it on your sleeve like that, it's and yes, I'm 52 years old, so I can relate. Before I started doing my podcast, I was turning into that stodgy old fucker that was listening to the same couple of records and wasn't broadening my horizons. And then I started to say, hey, this podcast can't just be about me running down my own heroes and people I want to have on here. I got to think about the audience. I got to think about who are some of these younger bands, who are some of these extreme metal bands in maybe genres that I might not necessarily listen to, but it's going to garner me some views and some subscribers. I got to branch out a little bit, and I got to inform myself before I have them on. Let me listen to what they do a little bit. You know what I mean? So I have a fair representation of who they are as musicians or whatever. So it has gotten me out of my comfort zone, because I'm like that too. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go back and listen to the same records that I liked in the 80s,
right,
and not broaden my horizons at all.
Yeah, and the one thing, I mean, obviously, when you start a podcast, you want Metallica, you want Megadeth, you want all of the big bands on the thing. And the one thing that I've enjoyed over the years, I didn't really expect to happen, was grab a band early and watch them blossom. There's been a few bands like that I caught on to early, that were opening the festival, and then obviously I was just at Louder Than Life over the weekend, and now they're high up on the bill on the main stage now and stuff. And when I see them backstage, they immediately come give you the hug, like, oh man, it's great to see you type stuff. So there've been a couple of things in podcasting I didn't expect. And that's one of them. And the other one was that kind of community. A lot of my best friends right now are fellow podcasters that I may or may not have ever met in person.
Right.
It's crazy how the community that I didn't really expect to, have around me, and people reaching out saying, hey, what do you think about this, what do you think about that? A lot of young podcasters reaching out, how do I get started? And and I'm like, I don't know, like, you tell me how to do it. It's like, it's like you get a microphone and you just yell into the ether. First thing, start with a laptop, there you go, you're off and running. There you go. No, honestly, dude, I when I started the podcast, it was like 2 weeks between, I think I'm going to do a podcast, till my first episode came out. Like I didn't plan it. I didn't, bank episodes early. I didn't promote it. Like everything that you're supposed to do with a new podcast, like I didn't do. And even, I don't think the first episode's online anymore, but it was funny. Even my first episode, I didn't start with like who I was, why I'm doing it.
Right.
I literally started off the first episode, all right, this week on the podcast, blah, blah, blah. Like I'd been doing it for 10 years or something already. But,
who's this guy?
Right. Yeah. But, that's the one nice thing about like Primer 55 being the bass player of that band, even though I was an original member and, I'm not in a lot of the photos from back in the day, but I did enough touring with them to, they gave you like a little bit of cachet. And then my first like 10 episodes of the podcast were all people I toured with, people I played with. So I was able to, who is this guy kind of coming out of nowhere, where Chris Gale from Five Finger Death Punch and Bobby Burns of Soulfly and, guys in Dope and things like that had come on the show like right out the gate. And a lot of me texting my friends saying, hey, if I did a podcast, would you come on? And all of them said yes.
Sure.
And it was awesome that they did that. And so I was able to take those first 10 or so episodes. And when I started dealing with publicists, dealing with, hey, I'd like to have your artist on my show. Like, well, who have you had on? Or things like that. And you're like, oh, well, I've already had, Five Finger Death Punch.
It helps.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it definitely helped me kind of get my foot in the door.
Yeah, because I started out, man, just reaching people on social media, setting them up very much like I did with you. It's just, we have a conversation.
Yeah.
I send you a link. I'm starting to get into that territory now, like where it's gained some traction. I've got a good amount of subscribers and views. So I have said, hey, you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let me reach out to some publicists and try to reel in maybe some bigger fish. I realize I'm not going to have Lars Ulrich on tomorrow or anything like that. But at least angle for somebody. And I do find, that the rock and the metal and the extreme metal world are always willing, man. They always appreciate a platform, man. Yeah. It is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it is the best community, man. It gets probably bashed the most, but it really is filled with the best people, though.
Yeah. And the one nice thing about over the weekend, like you hit me up, I was at Louder Than Life, and a lot of the media kind of gets together in the back there. And it's funny, at sometimes, I'm looking around and there's Rock Feed, there's Metal Injection, Jose Mangan's running around. Like, it's just like, everybody's back there. And it's just like a family reunion of people. Like Hardcore Keem showed up. It's like I jokingly posted a photo of me and Hardcore Keem and the guy from Rock Feed together. And I'm like, here's your algorithm all in one photo, because it's kind of like that with back there, and just being able to see everybody. And I was actually having this conversation with Brian from Rock Feed, and I'm sure you get it too, where you're a solo podcast can be very lonely, and you're like, all right, and you're making all the decisions, and you're doing everything, and you're dealing with the comments, and you're dealing with publicists, and you're all by yourself, and you're kind of in your room getting everything together or putting it all out. And then actually being around the other people, it's very inspiring to kind of be around some of those people and watch them work and watch them do their thing. And, picking little pieces of like what this guy's doing, what that guy's doing. And when you hit me up and said, hey, you want to come on the show? I said, yes. And one of the reasons why I always say yes to these is early on, I asked a couple of podcasters that were big at the time and are still big, and I just got really big timed by them. And at the time, I'm like, I don't know if you can cuss on this or not, but I'm just like, who the hell is this guy? To really treat me like that, And so I made a point to that day. I was like, if I ever get to a point where people want me on their show, like, I'm gonna say yes, like, And so I definitely, and I appreciate you having me on and, wanting to.
My pleasure. Yeah. It hasn't happened to me so much in the music world, but on my channel, I do two separate podcasts. I do a boxing one as well. And it has happened to me where and I won't drop names of boxers specifically, man, but where they thought that, my podcast in their eyes wasn't deemed big enough. You know what I mean? Right. So I mean, but everybody has to start somewhere, though. It's kind of like that. You go out to get a job and you don't have any experience. But how do you get experience if you don't get the job? You know what I mean? Like, how do you get there if someone's not willing to come on? Now, do you feel like, because I cringe a little bit when I look at my early on episodes, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have I was using the internal cam from my laptop. I didn't have a good mic set up. It's very grainy. It's very lo-fi. But when I look where I've come from to where I am, I'm super proud of what I've accomplished. Do you remember your first episode and who I should say your first guest? Yeah.
Well, the first guest of the podcast was the singer of the band Look What I Did. His name is Billy Donegan. He was kind of a friend of back in the day. It was kind of I knew he was a very good speaker. He was a little bit political, but he was also
Yeah.
I just knew he was a good talker. So I was like, I'll have him on. And it's funny, like, and that was before I didn't do video until like pandemic, 2020. And so like the first, the first 5 years of the show was all just an audio based, platform or whatever. And, you said you get a laptop and you've got a podcast. I ordered a $25 USB mic off Amazon, and I used a call recorder app on my phone for the interviews. And it was, but I still can't listen to myself, honestly. Like I do the edit, I'll edit one time, and then I can't listen to my wife still listens to the podcast, and sometimes we'll get in her car and it'll pop on, and I immediately like turn it off. I'm like,
me too, bro.
Hear
Me
myself,
too. Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way, and I think it's just human nature, man. Most people, I think, hate the sound of their own voice. I don't know why, man, but they just do. Yeah, I don't usually, I don't tend to look back too much. I'm like, I don't go on there and say, hey, let me go on and rate my performance and let me see how that, how that episode went or whatever. So, so when you got into it, well, first of all, before we talk more about the podcast, man, you are a bass player though by trade, right? So I always think about bass players, and I've had plenty of them on the podcast. It always seems like when young men are getting into music, everybody wants to be the glitz and the glam of the front man, or shred like Eddie Van Halen. Did you choose the bass, or did the bass choose you? You know what I mean? Because it is deemed often as an unglamorous instrument, but yet so vital in a band, holding down the low end, really the backbone of a band, a vital part of the rhythm section. How do you find your way to the bass, or it finds its way to you?
I mean, honestly, I think I wanted to start out as a drummer. And I tell the story of when I was about 11, my dad's friends had a Southern rock tribute band. They play Skinner and 38 Special and all that stuff. And so they would rehearse near the house, and my dad would go down and hang out with them. This was early 90s, I guess. And he would go down and hang out with them, watch them rehearse all that stuff. And I went with him one day, and I was like excited to be around instruments, because I got into Kiss and stuff when I was like 8, 9 years old. And just like, I was always drawn to music and to performing and really wanting to be a part of it. But I never, my dad raised me as a single father. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. Like we had zero money. Like honestly, I recently, within the last few years, sat down and talked to him. I'm like, how did we make it? Because he he just shook his head like, we almost didn't, kind of thing. But that being said, I mean, he took me down to his friend's rehearsal space, and I get there, and the drummer was left-handed, so like I couldn't play the drums. I couldn't get by there. And the bass player handed me his bass, and I just sat there hitting the E string and like rattling the whole room. And I immediately wanted a bass from then on. And then I think my dad gave me like $5 a week allowance. It was like $5 a week allowance, and then he gave me, it was like school lunch was like $6 for the week. So and then I got it was like right around Christmas, I got like $100 from somebody and like another 20 from somebody else. So I like saved. We went down to the guitar store. I found a bass. It was like $150. So I saved everything I could, and like I went and bought it. And I think he was impressed that I like saved for something, and he ended up buying me like a little combo amp, little crate amp. Yeah. And then I just dove right in. I think I was 11 when I got a bass. I started, I really got into Cliff Burton and Newstead and ironically David Ellefson and just all those dudes from back then. And really just I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, but I did I guess I did the best I could. The thing is, now is even getting ready for the new metal nights and playing those covers and stuff. I can just type it up on YouTube, and there's a guy playing it and the tab, and exactly what's going on. And you don't have to sit there, because early in when I started, you would get those tab books. You get Guitar World, and it might have a tab, a baseline tab, and you're just trying to figure it all out. And now getting ready to go on tour and playing. Like I said, I've played so much lately that like my chops are through the roof. But
That must
Yeah,
feel
it's
pretty
just,
good, though. It must feel pretty good.
oh yeah, no, it feels great. My wife always like I've gone on stage a few times, while being married with her. She's always asked me if I'm nervous, and I always tell her I'm never nervous because it's kind of what I do. Now, if I went on stage to play guitar, or if I went on stage to play drums, or if I went on stage to sing or keyboard, anything but the bass, I would be extremely nervous because that's not what I do. Like I play bass. That's just what I've always done. I've like for 30
Are you somewhat
years.
proficient at any other instruments, though? I mean, could you know your way around a few other ones?
I mean, anything stringed, I could probably make my way around and at least, I could play guitar on stage if I really needed to, but I just have always, I was never the guitar player that turned into a bass player. I was always just a bass player, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times you hear the guy that well, my band needed a bass player, so I switched over to bass. It was, I was the rare breed that picked it up because that's what I wanted to do.
Is it fair to call Primer 55 new metal? I've always been
absolutely
confused. Yeah, I've always been I've always wondered, man, what bands make the cut when it comes to because being in the rock and metal world, there's genres and subgenres of those genres and subgenres of the subgenres. Like now it's gotten ridiculous. Metalcore, grindcore, deathcore. I mean, there's just so many genres out there, man. But are you able to put a finger on, because you played in a band, that's of that specific genre? Who started that genre? Is there one band you could point at and say, there they are, the godfathers of new metal?
Well, I think Korn is going to be the one that everybody kind of falls back to. I mean, and I know even at the time, because in '94 when that Korn record comes out, I'm 15, and I'm loving at the time, Biohazard and Sepultura, and there was a lot of groove in a lot of those bands, even like Obituary's World Demise. Like there was a lot of groove going on.
Yes.
And then everything kind of once you hear that first Korn record, it just kind of all came together. We're listening to Faith No More and Primus and all that. But Korn kind of encapsulated all of it. Yeah. But the one thing is I did actually a new metal podcast for a while for Knotfest, and I always said that new metal is like with hair metal. There's a sound. There's kind of a there's kind of a sound. In thrash, there's a sound. But new metal is like an era, because you have bands like Slipknot, but you have bands like Limp Bizkit and Deftones and Static X, and they don't sound alike, but they're new metal because they were all kind of in the same era. So it's more of an era and a mentality rather than this is now like rap rock. Now that's you can kind of pinpoint that, but I've always said new metal is more of an era rather than a sound.
So there were any of those bands that you mentioned, though, because some of them do predate Korn, though, man, but you would still point at Korn, though. Like you mentioned Faith No More. I think of bands like that, or the Chili Peppers. You mentioned Primus as well, man. A few of those bands do predate what Korn was doing or whatever, but you wouldn't give them full-on credit as being the pioneers of new metal.
Right. I think it's funny. There's a podcast called Roach Coach out there, and they're kind of a new metal podcast, and they kind of go over all of this stuff. And I think of the new metal era, I think it starts with Korn, but the Korn was an amalgamation of Faith No More and Primus and everything else. And so I mean, there's definitely the grandfathers of the scene, to where maybe Black Sabbath's not a glam band, but they probably spawned the glam, or the Deep Purple or Led Zeppelin, like those guys, they the forefathers or whatnot. But yeah, I think it definitely started around that Korn, Deftones, Limp Bizkit, all that stuff kind of coming out in the late '90s, mid to late '90s. It's kind of where I think new metal had a pretty good run from about '94 to 2004. I think you've got a pretty decent run in there of bands. And
you as a bass player, is it fair to say that new metal, because it is its own unique sound, what's the thing that makes it jump out where you can point it and say new metal? I feel like the bass, you being a bass player, maybe you can confirm or deny this, that the bass really seems like it is a very prevalent instrument, in that genre. It stands out. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, if you go with Fieldy, obviously, he's doing God knows what on the bass. Yeah. Actually, I had to learn a Korn song for one of the things, and I never really dove into Fieldy's playing, and I was just like, what is he really doing here? And finally diving into stuff,
And I was, so it's funny. I actually ended up playing like half of what he would play and then half of what the guitars were playing, because I was like, I don't like what you're doing here, Phil D. Like, I'm gonna go do my own thing on this track. But you know, he's definitely a unique player. You know, and then you got dudes like She from Deftones, you know, rest in peace him. But I mean, he was doing some really cool stuff under you know, underlying all of Steph from Deftones riffs, and you know, even Sam Rivers and Limp Bizkit probably doesn't get enough credit for being a great bass player, but he's always had some really cool bass lines and things like that. So I mean, there's definitely dudes in there that are doing some really cool stuff if you're paying attention.
Right.
So yeah. So I think that's the one thing that's kind of good with the kind of the bass players throughout the, you know, the new metal era. Even like, you know, Homeboy from Mudvayne, you know, obviously that's a dude.
Yeah.
You know, his playing is bananas.
Is there one bass player out there? Maybe more than one. You know, there might be multiple answers for you, but are there even 2 or 3 names that come to mind immediately? I hate to ask the dreaded influence question, so I'll kind of word it differently. Are there any bass players out there that you feel like have had the most impact on your playing?
Most impact on my playing.
I guess that is asking your influence.
It's just fine. You know, I mean, like even. I
mean, you feel like their fingerprint is on your playing somehow.
Yeah, when I was learning, I was kind of going back and listening to some of the stuff that, like, who was that? Oh, this is what it is. So when I went back and had to learn some Guns N' Roses stuff. And it was funny how much Duff McKagan style I play, because I didn't grow up a Guns N' Roses fan, and I'm not to this day like a giant fan of the band. But when you go back and listen to Appetite, like my style and his style are very similar. Not that I'm on that kind of level, but I was like, oh, I play a lot more like Duff McKagan than I thought. You know, Cliff Burton was somebody that's the one dude that I went back and tried to learn as much as I could of, you know, with Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets and Kill 'Em All, and just really the extreme levels that he kind of took the bass. And now, you know, what's funny now doing, because I do co-host the David Ellefson Show, and kind of going back and learning his bass lines again. I'm like, why did I not learn more of these back in the day? Like, because his bass playing is insane. Like some of the stuff some of the stuff that he does. It was funny. One day I was sitting there practicing, and I was like, got a little thing to do where I ended up learning Peace Sells, not just the intro, but like the whole song. Yeah. And I was sitting there playing along to it, and there was like a part where he does something, you know, off the wall, and he called me in the middle of it. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ironically, I'm learning Peace Sells." And he goes, "Why, did Mustaine call you?" And I was like, "No." But then I convinced him, I'm like, "What are you doing on the bridge right here? Like, why would you do that?" And he's like, "I don't know." You know, it was just one of those like funny moments where, you know, your childhood and your fandom and everything all collide.
Yeah, the worlds collide.
The dude that your dude's bass line that you're learning just calls you in the middle of it. Yeah. Like, ironically, I'm learning Peace Sells.
Yeah. Well, lest we not forget, though, man, that when Dave put the band together, though, you know, there was some sour grapes. He did kind of want to thumb his nose at Metallica. He was trying to put together a band that could very much even supersede them. And Dave Mustaine himself is a great player with amazing chops, man. Yeah. So I don't think it's no accident that Dave Ellefson ended up in that band. Obviously, he was looking for high-level players. Even when you think about the guys he had early on in that band, Chris Pohl, and, you know, some of those guys were amazing. You know what I mean? Like real muso-type guys, you know, that could really play.
Oh, yeah. And then there's a tribute to Metallica coming out where Ellefson's on, where he does Anesthesia, and he's posted clips of his version so far. And it's cool. He takes some liberties, and he plays with a pick rather than his fingers and things like that. But Ellefson's playing is it's crazy to watch him play bass. Like, it's wild, some of the stuff that he does.
Now, how do you wind up co-hosting? For people that might not know, we'll talk about your own podcast in a minute, but how do you end up co-hosting a podcast with the great Dave Ellefson?
I've interviewed him. He was one of my, like, in the first year of the podcast, he came on. And so over the years, I've interviewed him probably 5-6 times.
Okay.
Once in person, a few times over this. Even and during obviously during his scandal, I was one of the few that reached out early on and gave him a platform to kind of talk about what was going on. And I think I was one of his first interviews post getting booted for Megadeth and things like that. And so this back in January, I interviewed him. I just had him on the podcast, and at the after it was over, I was like, man, every time you say anything, you get a blabbermouth headline. You get the Rock News listens when you talk.
Yes.
I was like, why don't you do your own show and get those clicks for yourself? And he sat there for a second and he goes, and then I kind of pitched him on an idea, which is actually not the show that we're doing. But he goes, sounds really good, man. He's like, let me go to NAMM, the big music convention. And then after I'm done with that, let's get this going. And I got off the call and I went upstairs, and my wife, she always asks me, how did the interview go? And I go, I think I'm doing a podcast with David Ellefson now. And I just started kind of laughing.
We just became co-hosts.
I think I'm doing the so with his show, we actually did kind of, I was honestly thinking he was just going to kind of call in, once a week and just kind of update what's going on. I would ask him some Megadeth questions and we would move on. But man, it was like every day texting back and forth, seeing, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? He's like, should we have guests? I'm like, if you want to have guests, we can have guests. It's your show. Yeah. And it just kind of went from there. And it's been really crazy just being able to call him a friend. Like I said, I mean, like I can vividly remember being in middle school and getting ready for school, listening to Countdown to Extinction and my freshman photo, I'm wearing a Megadeth shirt in my school photo. And so, and now like my wife recently had surgery, and like the day of the surgery, he texted me and asked me how she was doing. And I'm like, why is why is he texting me asking me how my wife's doing? But yeah, man, so that's been awesome. And just the fan in me, even recently, like with the Megadeth retirement, I kept telling him, I'm like, people want to know what you think about this. Like you need to put out something.
Yeah.
And he kept kind of putting it off, and he kept saying you didn't want to do it. And then finally we were doing an interview, and after the interview, he said, all right, let's record a quick thing about the Megadeth retirement. And so I just kind of interviewed him about the Megadeth retirement. It's the biggest episode we have.
Right.
It's like 50,000 views on it or something. And I'm like, dude, like, and that's another one of those, like every time you talk, somebody's going to ask you about this and you're going to answer it, and they're going to get all the clicks and they're going to get all the YouTube revenue and things like that. So I was like, you might as well kind of get that for yourself. But yeah, it's been an amazing like partnership. And it's been, I've had a couple of co-hosts in the past that, kind of come and go, and I always joke that I'm an only child. So I think like, I don't know how to play with other people.
I am too. Yeah, I am too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really know how to like have a brother or sister to kind of share my toys with.
Yeah. So, I relate to that definitely.
So when it comes to, being able to do what you want to do and get on a certain schedule and edit and do all this other stuff and trying to deal with other people's schedules and things like that, that's always been kind of the issue where I'm like, when I'm ready to podcast, I'm ready to podcast, rather than, I can't do it on Tuesday. I got this, or I can't do it on Wednesday because my kid's got this thing, and I'm just after a while, you're just like, yeah,
that's a problem I ran into every time I try to do it with co-hosts too. It's just like, what? I want to just be able to go up and just flip the computer open and do an interview. If a normal hours, and I like to operate on the earlier side, just like anybody else. But if some big opportunity comes and they can't do it until 10 p.m. at night, I want to know that, hey, I don't have any entanglements. I don't have to okay this or say, hey, is my co-host going to be cool with 10 p.m. tonight? He has to work tomorrow morning. I know I got to work. And if it's an interview that I'm willing to sacrifice sleep for, or okay, let me go up into my studio and open up the computer. It's later than I'd like to be operating here, but I mean, I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
It's nice
Yeah,
not
I
to
mean, there's
have to
definitely
buy anybody and have that freedom to just be like, okay, you know what I mean? I don't have to be, you know, have someone okay this, you know what I mean? And be on
right.
board.
Yeah, I've definitely had those weird ones where the weird hours of I interviewed the alien weaponry. They're from New Zealand, you know,
Yes. The time
and there's a
differences. Yeah.
yeah. There was the band Bloodywood. They're from India, and that randomly they're 9.5 hours different. So it was just like the half hour in there like threw me off. I'm like, all right, so you know, if it's at 12 here, it's 9:30 there, and like
Yeah.
trying to like do the
Yeah.
math, and I'm like, so I flipped on the camera hoping that they would be there, you know, at the time that I popped up. But they were cool. They were there, but yeah, and it's funny because David spends a lot of his time in Europe, and so our schedules are really weird because I'm Eastern time zone. He's wherever the hell he is, 6-7 hours ahead of me.
Right.
But then we've interviewed obviously people from like the Bay Area and things like that. So it'll be like 9 a.m., 11, and then 7 p.m. Like we're all around the world just kind of popping on these calls. But it's been a lot of fun, man. I mean, my favorite thing that people get when people comment of like, why is this guy here? Like talking about me. Because I'm like thinking the same thing. I'm like, why am I on a podcast with David Ellefson and Chris Poland? Like,
right.
And they're talking back and forth. And I just sit back and listen because I'm a fan, and you know, I can't really insert myself into them talking about doing drugs in the 80s together.
Right.
So, like, so people are like, why is he here? And sometimes I'm like, I agree with you. Why am I here? But you know, but then the other part of me is like, well, because it was my idea for the show. It's like I edit everything, I post everything, I do all the graphic. You know, it's like
right. You're doing a lot of the legwork. And that's probably the stuff right there, man. You know, the little behind the scenes things that maybe Dave wouldn't do. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, he definitely wouldn't do that. But I mean, that's kind of our give and take on the podcast. You know, he'll do all that, all the, you know, he's the name.
Sure.
Then, you know, I do the grunt work. Yeah. Sometimes with his interviews, I kind of want to be like I'm kind of an on-screen producer, really, if anything.
Right.
And it, you know, let them talk, and if it starts to veer off a little bit, I can kind of insert myself and get it back on track. And then we've also interviewed some bands that, you know, we did like Drowning Pool, where I have more of a relationship with them than he does. So it's kind of a give and take there. But yeah, there's been a lot of people on the podcast where it's like I have no reason to be in the episode, but I'm still there because, but in all honesty, you know, David wants me there because he likes me to be able to course correct if he's going off the deep end or bring up something that he might not, or things like that. So a lot of times the main answer to the question of like, why is he here? I'm like, well, it's because David wants me here. You know?
Right. At the end of the day,
show.
yeah. And you are kind of acting as moderator, you know what I mean? Like you make a good point, man. Cause sometimes, man, like, you know, you do need someone to kind of like, you know, kind of rein the conversation in a little bit too. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, that's what a host does. You know what I mean? Those guys are such creative spirits, you know, like you're talking about Dave Ellefson and Chris Poland, man. You know what I mean? They're two creative types with a lot of memories. And yes, people tune in to want to hear those memories, you know what I mean? But people that don't podcast wouldn't understand, but there needs to be some you know, somebody's almost got to be the conductor of it, you know what I mean? You know, just like you would be with like a symphony, you know what I mean? You know, someone's kind of gotta keep control of it almost. Otherwise, it's just two people having a conversation, you know what I mean? Which I think probably a lot of people would tune in and be like, wow, I'm tuning in just to watch Dave Ellefson and Chris Poland shoot the shit about their days in Megadeth together, you know?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny because David's a talker too, and he's kind of new to being the host. You know, he's always been the guest.
Right.
You know, so a lot of times he'll just talk for a long time, and people are like, "Why does he talk so much?" And I'm like, "Well, first off, it's the David Ellefson Show. He can talk all he wants."
Right.
But,
absolutely.
You know, and he's a talker to begin with, and we keep bringing up Chris Poland, but Chris Poland is not a talker. Like he's kind of quiet. So people were mad at Dave for that episode because Dave talks so much, but Chris is actually really quiet too. So it's like, kind of pulling stuff out of him and things like that. But and the other thing is fun too is, you know, like beforehand, we don't do a lot of show prep. It's not like, but every once in a while it'd be like, hey, why don't you ask this question? So I'm, you know, make me the bad guy rather than, you know, make him the bad guy.
Right.
We're like, because we had Steve DiGiorgio on the podcast, and Steve DiGiorgio was like, you know, came on played on the Megadeth record that Ellefson was kicked off of.
Yep,
And,
amazing bass player. Yep.
so, yeah, incredible bass player. But obviously, if David and Steve are on the podcast together, that needs to be brought up. And so towards the end of the podcast, I jokingly said, let's talk about the Ellefson in the room.
Yeah.
And Steve, Steve kind of said the same thing that I kind of say about stuff. He goes, man, I can remember being a kid listening to Killing Is My Business on my Walkman, riding my bike. And so when Megadeth comes and says, hey, will you play on this record? He's like, hell yeah, I'll play on the record. It had nothing to do with Ellefson. It wasn't like Steve stole a gig or anything like that. Ellefson was already out. And they had already had this talk before. David's band Dieth had played a few shows with Testament, and Steve pulled David aside and just like, hey, let's clear the air. Let's make sure nothing's bad here. Nothing's there's nothing going on. And David's the type of person, he's not going to hold a grudge for that type of stuff. But it was, so they had already had that talk before, but people tuning in are probably going to want to see, them kind of talk it out too.
Sure. Yeah, that's must-see TV right there, or must-see podcast at least. But yeah, I agree though, man. Like, I mean, if it wasn't Steve, it's going to be somebody, man. Someone's going to land that gig. I mean, you can't have an extra grind with anybody who's going to step in that role. I mean, Dave Mustaine's obviously going to fill that role with somebody. So being as that you do have kind of an inside track on it, man, and for people that may not have seen the episode or not familiar with what you do in that particular episode, even with Dave Ellefson, where did Dave stand on the retirement of Megadeth, and where do you stand on the retirement of Megadeth? We see so many bands kind of go and then they're lured back in, 4 or 5 years down the road. Everybody wants to see them again. We're excited. We want these guys to come back. Oh, a reunion, a comeback tour, whatever, man. I mean, where do you stand on Megadeth calling it quits?
I'm like that. I guess I would like to see most of my heroes kind of go out on top, and be able to kind of go out on their own terms. But like you said, I've seen so many bands retire,
right?
And then even this past weekend, Slayer played, and I went to that was one of the last shows I went to before the pandemic was Slayer's final tour. Back in 2019,
and theirs is even. I mean, theirs was so short; it's not even a viable retirement. I mean, back in a 5-year window. I mean, that's not a valid retirement.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just kind of like, even Kiss is already kind of playing show. They're going to do a non-makeup show or something. Like that. And I get it. I mean, I get that you want to say this is the retirement. You want to make the last thing a big deal and all this other nonsense. But like once you do the final show, you're still a musician. You're still in a band. You still want to play those songs, and you're like, I guess we probably shouldn't have done that.
Right.
But
ourselves in the foot.
I mean, even when I started going to see shows back in the 90s, first time I ever saw Korn, they were opening for Ozzy on the Retirement Sucks tour in like 1996.
Right.
So I mean, it's been happening.
Yeah, obviously we know how that played out. Yeah.
I mean, he basically toured for another 30 years after that.
Right.
So it's. I guess it's, if you want to get out and see the band and one last time and all this other stuff, I do hope that somewhere down the line that they do at least bring Ellefson up for a song or a show or and I think that's kind of where he's at with that too. Was he mainly came down to he would like something on the scale of like the Back to the Beginning thing where maybe Mustaine plays a couple of songs with Chris Poland and somebody, or a couple of songs with Ellefson and things like that, and just kind of give a little nice send off to everybody in the band. Because I think one of the reasons I think I got Ellefson to actually talk about it, I was like, dude, Mustaine is not only retiring Megadeth for himself, he's retiring Megadeth for you, he's retiring Megadeth for Sean Drover and all the Chris Broderick, all those dudes over the years that have been in the band, and there's just no more Megadeth after that. Hope whatever, if they actually do it or not. But I hope that they I hope for just the fans' sake, I think that I hope that they bring that Ellefson up at some point. I hope that there's enough forewarning of me so I can make it out to the show. to see the show, to see Ellefson up there play Megadeth tracks. But yeah, man, I hope that I hope it's sincere. I mean, it's going to be one of those like probably 3-year long retirements. It's not like they're going to put out the record and do a month of shows and then call it a day. It's going to be it's going to be that long ass Kiss retirement that we, we all
well, for people that don't know though, man, I mean, Dave Mustaine, and I think it's been pretty public, man. He's battled some health issues himself though. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I do agree with your assessment of wanting to see bands go out on top, because we do see a lot of bands out there you know, who get critiqued. Everybody now is at concerts, pulling out their phone, taking YouTube videos, coming back with these vitriol-filled reviews on YouTube of how these bands don't have the chops anymore. How dare they take people's money? And some of them, there is a valid point. You know what I mean? Like,
we've seen a lot of those.
Some bands are staying at the party a little too long.
Yeah. But the sad thing is promoters are still paying those bands crazy money to be able to put that logo on the marquee and sell some tickets and sell some beer and sell some merch and things like that. So we went to see somebody recently and it was just like, I'll just say it was Ace Frehley. We went, like I said, when I got into music, first thing I got into was Kiss, and I loved Ace Frehley, and I loved, I thought Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was a great movie. That whole thing. And I'd actually I saw Ace in like 95 on like the Bad Boys of Kiss tour or whatever it was called. It was like him and Peter Criss right before the reunion. And then I got to see Kiss a few times over the years with Ace Frehley in the band, and then saw Ace solo a couple of times. But there was a lot of video going around of these latest Ace Frehley shows where he's not doing well. And we made it, I think, 4 songs into the set, and I was like, I'm out of here. Like, he was doing Rock Soldiers, and it just like he was like offbeat and everything. It was just bad. And even my wife was like, "Oh yeah, he's fucked up right now." Like you could just tell he was not, he was not all there. So you don't want to see that. But the thing with that show, and what's going to continue for Ace to pop up at these things, is shirts were like $50 a piece.
Yeah,
merch line was for forever long.
Yep, and
every guy leaving that merch line had 3 shirts over his shoulder.
Yep.
So I mean, until the fans stop and say no more, they're not gonna stop. Ace Frehley's not gonna stop, because God knows how much money he's making every night. Sure. Yeah.
And plus I imagine it's probably hard, and I'm not a music artist myself, but I imagine that to some degree it is probably hard to walk away from. Ego has to enter it a little bit. I mean, who doesn't want to be up on a stage with thousands of people chanting, cheering for you? I mean, that's got to be, you could speak to it better than I can. That's got to be a high all of its own, though.
Oh, it's wild. I mean, it's crazy. Like, there's nothing else in your life that you can do that's going to make you feel like that. There's nothing like that in the world, and but there's also like even with these primer shows coming up, I knew that I've known for a little bit that we were going to do these shows, and I'm like, I think I've lost like 35 pounds, since it was announced, because I'm not going to go on stage fat. I don't want to see photos of me like, my gut hanging over the bass or something like that. It's like, it's vanity or whatever it is, but it's I just don't want to show back up. People haven't seen me in 18 years on stage. What the fuck happened to that guy?
And of course, part of the music industry is, for as superficial as it sounds, though, man, a lot of it is image, though. It is. I mean, people are very much coming to hear the music and coming to, to hear your sound. But I mean, rock and roll is certainly about a look too. Everyone's shooting for some type of look.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go to see your favorite band of all time and they come out all fat Elvis on you.
Right. You want to. I just went a couple months ago, to the casino here. I'm in upstate New York, so he was passing through town. I went to see David Lee Roth do his solo thing, probably just because, for over 2 years now, I've been doing this podcast. and I've been making the outrageous claim because of the hair that I'm the love child of Diamond Dave. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's how I try to make my podcast stand out, because it does help sometimes with everybody podcasting nowadays to have some sort of a shtick. So that was kind of like my shtick for a while. So I figured, hey, the guy's coming right into my backyard. I've been on my podcast for almost 3 years now, spouting that I'm his illegitimate son. So
Right.
I mean, how can he come this close and I don't go see him? And I guess I love Van Halen and love Diamond Dave so much, man, that maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses. But now that I'm looking back, though, it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. Yeah.
I've seen some of the video. It's funny. It's like when those initial videos kind of came out from M3, it was like everybody that was at M3 was saying how awesome it was.
Yes.
Everybody watching the videos
was
like, this is awful.
Right.
And I've definitely been in those situations where you're at a show and you're like, man, this is incredible. And then you go back and you find a clip on YouTube and you're like, it just doesn't feel the same. I mean, there's definitely a vibe in the air, and
sure.
I'm a massive Pantera fan. And
yes.
And when they talked about coming back around with Phil and Rexx and the boys, I was just like, I immediately just took the stance where I was on board. I was just like, I'm not, because I have a lot of friends that are also massive Pantera fans that are like, no Dime, no Vinny, no Pantera.
I know. Yep.
And I was like, I'm gonna go and watch, because even one of the reasons I went to the final Slayer shows is because Phil was playing Pantera songs with the Illegals.
Right.
And so he was, and they were okay. It was cool to hear those songs loud again. But when I saw those first shows announced, one of the first shows was near me, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go up there. It was in Indianapolis, and we got tickets through Knotfest when I was working for them, and got some good seats. But we got there early, and the vibe in the parking lot, they were people throwing football, having drinks, grilling out dogs, like the whole thing, and you could hear people. You were talking to people walking by, and they were like, I heard people saying that how far they drove. They were from Cleveland, they were from here, they were from Kansas City and St. Louis. Everybody just, 18,000 people emerged onto Indianapolis, and it felt like, because luckily I got to see Pantera probably 10, 12 times as a kid, and it felt like a Pantera show. Obviously Dime's not there, obviously Vinny's not there. But it, it had the fire, it had it had the logos on fire, and then they did a ton of tributes to Diamond, Vinny. And after the show, on the way out to the parking lot, everybody was so happy. Everybody was in such a good mood. Everybody was smiling, and we all know that it's not Pantera. We know that it's not Vinny and Dime, but it was those songs live. It was those songs loud. It was a whole new generation being able to see those songs live if they wanted to go. And I'd also be a hypocrite if I said that, if a member of a band dies, then you can't go on, because obviously with Primer, obviously Jason has passed away.
Sure.
And so it's kind of hypocritical for me to go like, no Dime, no Pantera, and someone just looks at me and it's like, no Jason, no Primer, kind of thing.
Right. But I take umbrage with that, though, because people that did make that statement, though, for people that don't know, these aren't just hired guns, though, man. Like getting Zach, getting Charlie, though, these are guys that were part of the Pantera inner circle. Yeah. It's not just they went out and just got a guitar player or a drummer. You know what I mean? Like, these guys were very much part of the Pantera family, though. So it is a good fit.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And it was funny because even leading up to it, there was always if Pantera got back together, who would be the guitar player? Who would be, everybody always had that conversation. I was always, the Zach was obviously the choice there, but on a random side, I was just like, what about a John 5 or something like that? That would be kind of fun to see, John 5 doing it. And then with the drummer, I think I always went more like Chris Adler or like Gene Hoglan or somebody like that. I think that would have been awesome.
Yeah. So and I've gotten the chance I've had the pleasure of having several of those guys like from the NOLA scene, man. And they all stand behind, Pantera out there doing what their things. And they all kind of espouse the same thing. You're getting newer generations to get to hear these songs live, though. You know what I mean? That's really what it's about, man. Just passing the torch and just keeping it going from generation to generation. Like, those are timeless songs. You know what I mean? Timeless albums.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, those should be shared. You know what I mean? And even though there was bad blood for a while with the Abbott brothers, I think ultimately, they would love to see this,
Yeah.
I think they'd be happy that this is going on.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed, Rita over the years. I've interviewed another side cast I had for a minute. I actually had a Pantera podcast for a while.
Yeah.
And just, interviewed people in the circle. And honestly, one of the reasons I stopped doing it was because those episodes always ended up being so heavy.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
Because you always have to touch on Dime passing or Vinny passing. And I had Patrick King on, who was Vinny's drum tech for a long time.
Yep.
And him talking about Vinny dying. You would just get off these shows and I would just have to sit down here in the studio and just kind of collect myself, because
it's a lot. Yeah.
And so they actually ended up being where you wanted to be a celebration of the band, it turned into a therapy session with everybody. Right. It became pretty rough. I mean, I did 10 episodes of that show, and by the end of it, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. But yeah, I think that obviously, I think Dime would have gotten the band back together, and then that would have meant that Vinny would have been a part of it. I mean, obviously, the main reason Vinny didn't want to do it for so many years is because his brother wasn't there. So if his brother was there, he'd probably want to do it. And actually, there's a series on Hulu that just kind of popped up, that Into the Void, and there's a Pantera episode on that, and it's and it's pretty in depth, and it's brand new, and the whole time they Rita's talking about how even at Christmas that was about to happen at Dime's death, Dime was kind of gearing up to get the band back together even then. So I mean, I think Dime would enjoy it. I think that obviously with Zach being involved, I think he would be a part of it. But man, just seeing those videos of Dime and stuff, and actually I saw Rita over the weekend at the Louder Than Life when she was at the she has her Dime her Dime bag of merchandise. And I talked to her there, and I showed her a picture of me and Dime as when I was 14 or 15. And just kind of had that conversation with her that I met Dime in August of 94. And the last time I talked to him was August of 2004, because Damage Plan came through town. I almost didn't go because I wasn't a big fan of Damage Plan, but some friends had an extra ticket and they're like, come on, let's go. And so we go to the show. Great show. They actually closed with Walk and A New Level. And I'm like, all right, this is fun. And then I left. And as I was leaving, I look over and Dime's standing next to the bus signing autographs. And I walk over to him, and I had this very weird closure conversation. Looking back on it, it was a very bizarre conversation to have with somebody that you didn't know it was about to pass away. But I was just like, thank you for all the, being kind to me over the years. Thank you for, the vulgar videos and things like that. Makes you want to be a musician. Even and having those vulgar videos, we had cameras around all the time. We always had a handheld camera going on because we wanted to be Pantera. We wanted to have fun. So I've got so much footage of some of my early bands because of that. But yeah, he was so kind to me over the years. Every time I talked to him, he was always so nice, and he was such a genuine guy. And I stated on the podcast tons of times over the years, Dimebag would have been awesome on Vine, would have been awesome on YouTube, would have been awesome on Instagram Reels.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the amount of stuff that he would do if he would just pop up on, Instagram Live and just do stupid shit, I bet.
Oh, I can imagine. He'd probably be popular with those cameos. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a guy?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, I get that sense from talking to guys from that scene that he really was just, we talked about earlier about, being a fan first. He just seemed like there was never any pretentiousness about him. He was just really an approachable guy. You know what I mean? A nerd, just a guy that happens to be hanging there and is going to get up on stage, but no different than the fans that are there that are going to watch him get up on stage,
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I think he's very relatable. I think that's why I think he resonates with so many people. You know, I mean, he never seemed to get, even when Pantera was at the height of their powers in the 90s. You know what I mean? He never had that air of I'm a rock star. You know?
No, he definitely was just one of us. You know, but yeah, it was cool. And actually, I got to talk to Vinny a year or two before he passed away too, and had a really good conversation with him. And sadly never got him on the podcast, but you know, and actually Rexx has always kind of been a white whale. I've actually got to interview Philip a couple of times, but yeah, Rexx would be, not that Rexx is the greatest interview, but I just want to, you know, kind of get the got to get that, you know, interview out of the way kind of deal. But
yeah.
But
he's he's a bucket list interview. You got to have him.
Right.
You got to have him. Now, with Primer 55 getting back into the swing, man, can you elaborate for people that that don't know what's going on, man? What is the game plan with Primer 55 going forward? Shows, new music, new albums, man? What's the game plan?
I think right now all of the above is on the table. We actually, when is this coming out? Do you know?
Oh, I usually have these up within a day or two.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we leave, well, if you in a day or two, like 2 weeks from Thursday. So, you know, 2 weeks from now, we start our first run of shows where we're playing Introduction to Mayhem in its entirety.
Okay.
We're gonna, you know, play 5 or 6 songs off of the new release. It's a quick headline run. I think it's like 9 or 8 shows in 9 days, or 9 shows in 10 days, something like that, through the Midwest and through Texas and stuff like that. And then I come home. I think we're home for like 2 weeks, and then we start like a 3-week tour with Smile Empty Soul. We're going to do a co-headline with those guys, you know, kind of flip-flopping, you know, who closes each night, things like that. And that starts November 1st and runs through, I think, the 23rd. So we kind of go from like Flint, Michigan out to the Whiskey and back, you know, back. And then, some, you know, announcements of other bigger shows next year are already kind of, those will be coming out soon too. Big announcement on what is that? A week from today, whatever. So it's September 30th. A big announcement will be on that. Be popping up that day. So make sure to you know, keep eye on the socials for that. And then yeah, I think we're, you know, like I said, man, new music's on the table. You know, it's been crazy. It's been late last year. You know, late 2024, Bobby hit me up, and he was having some liver issues, and he was not doing good. And I knew, you know, the day that I knew he wasn't doing good was the day that he told me that he was proud of me. I was like, oh God, like he's gonna die. Like, so, you know, he's never said anything like that to me at all, you know, ever. And so I was like, oh shit, he really is in bad health. And he had hit me up one day and just said, hey, if this certain person calls you and says that I've passed away, I want you to be the one to break the news. I'm like, don't put that on me. Like, I don't want to be I don't need those clicks. I don't need those, you know, I don't need that thing for me. So honestly, I thought anything Primer 55 was going to be over. I mean, he even not jokingly, he even said to me, he's like, let the band die with me. Which I told him, I was like, the day after you die, Toomey's Primer 55 experience is going on the road.
Yes.
but you know, he's like, let the band die with me. And so, I mean, he was literally like kind of getting his shit in order because he thought he was dying.
Yeah.
And so he ended up, I don't know the, you know, the full story, and I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I've heard him tell the story. So, you know, he moves to Texas. He goes to the doctor because something's not right. They're like, you need to have surgery like right now, but we can't even do it here. You got to go to this doctor. They send him to like Dallas, and they're like, you got to have surgery like immediately for whatever reason.
Yeah.
He actually said that he had to have his guts rearranged, which I think is funny. But and he goes into surgery. You know, he gets them all. He comes out of it, and then I think he's got like a new lease on life or something. You know, like that knocking on death's door kind of thing. And he hit me up and he said, it basically started with, hey, do you want to do a show? And I was like, yeah. And then it's like, do you want to do a couple of shows? I was like, all right. And I was like, all right, well, let me find a booking agent, because I'd actually, over the years, we'd always talked, like in 2020, before the pandemic, that would have been the 20th anniversary of Introduction to Mayhem. it was even, we even put it out that we were going to do a 20th anniversary run. And then obviously the pandemic happened. So there's been a couple of times where it's kind of like start, stop over the years. And last year, the year before, he was like, try to get a show. And so I like reached out to some promoters myself, and it's like Primer is like one of those bands, like if you know kind of band. So if like you didn't know who we were, it's like, you're probably not going to want to book it. And that's kind of what I was running into. And I was like, all right, well, let me find a booking agent. And so through the podcast, I've interviewed Mikey from Snot a bunch, and I hit him up, and I was like, kind of the same situation. Singer died, They replaced him, blah, blah, blah.
I've had Mikey on, ironically.
Yeah. Mikey's a good dude. Actually, I just saw him a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, hey man, who's booking your shows? He sent me the guy's email address. I cold emailed this guy. Would you like to book a 25th anniversary of Introduction to Mayhem run? Guy who knew it's like, absolutely. Like he deals with our era bands. And so, yeah, it kind of all came together pretty quick, just from, hey, do you want to do a couple of shows to, oh shit, we leave for tour in 2 weeks, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then with, and life happens, life works out in a very weird way. Like obviously starting with the podcast with David Ellefson, it's like when I told him that I was going to go back out on the road, he's super pumped for me. And then he's like, call this guy at Jackson, get you a bass hookup, call this guy at Black Star Amps, get you an amp hookup, like here's my string guy. Like he basically just gave me all of his information. And I was able to email all of those people and be like, hey, David Ellefson sent me your way. And so I'm 46. I've got my first bass endorsements. I got my first amp endorsements, like solo, solo endorsements. Primer always had like PV endorsements and stuff. But like it's truly a weird time in life, where everything's just kind of falling into place.
Yeah.
And so and we'll be doing some of the biggest shows, like with the announcement coming up, it'll be probably like one of the biggest shows that band's ever played, kind of thing. So it's
and where do you stand on touring now, man? Because and forgive me if I got any of this wrong, but you are a family guy though, right, man? Like what's a comfortable itinerary now, man? Because I know that as you get older, I'd imagine this is probably true with a musician too. You know what I mean? You don't really want to kiss the wife goodbye and leave all those creature comforts behind and go out on the road and cram yourself into a van or a bus or whatever, man. Have you guys had these kind of discussions on like what's a comfortable number? Like if we get this thing rolling again, how much touring do we want to do now that you got the family dynamic and you've got a home life?
Yeah, I mean it's I think the couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there is probably going to kind of be where we, dipping our toes back into it. But it's also like, I know this isn't going to last forever. And I know that, so, I mean, kind of got to strike while the iron's hot or whatever, however you want to say that too. I was like, this could be, a year of touring and then, people are like, cool, the nostalgia is over with and you guys can go now kind of thing. Or it could be, the next few years. But, it's a nice thing to just kind of, I guess it's just kind of see what happens with, the demand. My kids are older. Honestly, that was one of the reasons why I stopped touring in my last tours with Primer was 2007, maybe early 2008, because, my oldest son was, I think 3 at the time. And I remember like 2008, 2007, 2008 was not a good time for nu metal. It was, we were out there touring and playing, these bars and stuff with 20, 30 people in it, not making any money. And it was just a rough time. And so I just kind of had to make a decision to be, a family man, raise the kids and all that stuff. And, my youngest now is he'll be 11 soon. And I've had the conversations with him, this is what's going to happen is, this doesn't mean, I'm running away or anything like that, so he's old enough to kind of, and I think he's mature enough to kind of get what's going on too. Some kids aren't, but I think he's kind of like, I've taken him to some concerts and stuff and he's not a massive music fan. I definitely don't, I've never tried to really push my music on kids. Everybody's like, oh, you got to take them to, it's like bad parenting if you don't get your kids into your music. And I'm like, my kids can listen to whatever they want to. I didn't listen to, I listened to some of my dad's music, like Creedence Clearwater or Elton John or,
Sure.
things like that. Like, my dad was into some rock, but he was never into like, Deicide.
Right.
I'll play it around the kids. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But I've definitely never been like on that camp of you got to get your kids into the, Kiss and things like that. But I think he's old enough to kind of know what's going on and mature enough to, it'll suck. I mean, obviously it'll suck to be away from everybody, but the one difference now is the phones are different. I mean, you got FaceTime, you've got, you can jump on a call or you can do this, that, other thing. And even down to, I'm a massive Titans fan and I got Sunday Ticket on my phone. Like,
right.
When I toured in the past, I had a friend back home that would text me play-by-play. He would literally hit me highlights, Eddie George up the middle for 30 yards, shit like that. Like it was crazy, like how touring has changed to where now it's laptops and phones and everything else. Like we're as connected as we've ever been. My very early tours in the late 90s before Primer, it was calling cards and stop pay phones. I mean, it was, you might not have any contact with home for a couple of days.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah,
so now I don't think it's not gonna be as bad, but yeah, I mean, my wife, I like all the way back to my wife sees me on stage with a smile on my face. Like she knows she married a musician. She knows she married me. You know, and so you kind of get this part of me with that too. So it's not like I got married and then at 46 decided to start a band.
Right. Are you worried at all? I know you said you've been playing a lot of bass, but there's a difference between kind of like knocking the rust off and getting up there on stage. Are there any, even though you've been doing this for a while, are there any nerves involved? Hey, we're going to be out here really doing this again, man.
Yeah.
Are you dealing with any of that? I mean, I would assume that because you've done it for so long, then maybe that wouldn't exist. But then again, with a period of inactivity, maybe you are going through some of that.
Well, I think that honestly, doing the local stuff with the Louisville Loves guys, it's kind of knocked that rust off.
Yeah.
And then the band that I was in the 90s before Primer, we did like a kind of a hometown reunion show in Nashville, a couple of years ago too. And just being able to kind of play those songs in front of people again will be fun to just kind of do it again. It's like, like I said, that I played a couple of days ago it was like Louisville Loves Louder Than Life. It was the official Louder Than Life pre-party. It was Wednesday before the Thursday show. Yeah. And it was a free show. It was outdoors. It was, I expected maybe 30 people there, just to kind of, like a county fair or something. I did not expect anybody to be there just because it's all covers and it's, nobody knows what it is really. Dude, I walked out on stage. There had to be 1,000 kids just everywhere. And it's kind of in a downtown area where, it's kind of got some stuff. So there were kids up here, kids down there. And I was watching some videos back of it and they were singing along. I mean, there was like mosh pits, there was circle pits, there was crowd surfing. I'm like, we're not the real band. Like, we the place blew up for like, Toxicity and some Pop Roach stuff that we did. And it was just really bizarre, like how crazy people were going for us playing these covers. But I mean, it was probably one of the top 10 most people I've played in front of. And they were all like so into the music, even though it wasn't something that I wrote or something I was ever a part of. Like they were into it, and you felt pretty good. I mean, we were playing, I think we had a little bit more of the more accessible set of the bands, but we played Foo Fighters and Chevelle and just random stuff like that, and they were going nuts. I was just like, all right, so I'm excited to get back out there and kind of play the Primer stuff to to fans that, didn't get to see it the first time. Maybe you're too young the first time, or, saw the band a bunch back in the day. I'm really excited to see what these first shows are like, because we're playing Pops, which is in St. Louis, which is where they filmed the Loose video. There's kind of always, there's always been a kind of a kinship with that club. I'm kind of curious to see how that show turns out. That kind of seems to be the one that everybody's kind of converging on. But and it's also crazy just how many clubs are still there from 20, 30 years ago. Like of the 8 shows, I think I've played 3 of the clubs, in 20, 30 years ago. You're like, it's some of these places just won't die. But yeah, man, I'm excited to get out and see what everybody, I'm excited to see friends I haven't seen in years. I'm excited to see places I haven't been in a long time. I'm excited to tour with Uber and Lyft as an option,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that are like different that people might take for granted. But I mean, back in the day, you would have to hail a cab if you wanted to go somewhere weird. But now I can, pop it up to Uber and go do something or get some food or whatever. Just it's going to be a lot different. And I'm kind of excited to see how everything goes.
Now, is the Big Fuck You the last Primer 55 album? 2012? I mean, do I have that right?
That was I think what that was a re-release of the original demos before Introduction to Mayhem. I mean, technically, if you want to get super technical, I really think that there's 2 Primer 55 albums. There was obviously Introduction to Mayhem, and then there was the new release, which was 2001, and then there was a Family for Life thing, I believe it was called, but that was like a collection of demos and B-sides and a couple acoustic versions of songs. And then, I think there's been some re-releases of things over the years. But I mean, if you really want to nuts and bolts the thing, I think there's really 2 Primer albums and then some random stuff over the years.
So the fact that so many years have gone by and there's been such seismic changes in the music industry, man, have you guys as a band talked about, geez, when we do dig in and start to write new music and, what makes the most sense nowadays? Because it does seem like people are digesting music much differently. Is it an LP world? Is it an EP world? Is it a singles world? Where do you guys stand on that? Have you had those kind of conversations?
I mean, we haven't had those kind of conversations, but I mean, I think if I was to have that conversation, I think I really, I'm not a physical media must have it on the CD or the vinyl or, you know what I'm saying? Like I've definitely, changed with the times. I've got my Spotify subscription. I think it sounds fine, all that stuff. And so so some of my favorite bands are now kind of doing that deal where, I mean, they'll release half of the record before the record comes out. Yeah. But I think one of my favorite bands, they're not new, but they're newer, is Memphis May Fire. And they kind of, they'll release a track. So they'll put it out there. So they'll release a track. And then a month or 2 later, they'll release another track. So you got 2 tracks that you're kind of like, I'm going to listen to the first track. I'm going to listen to the second track back and forth. Third one, 1, 2, 3. Fourth one, 1, 2, 3, 4. And by the time the record comes out, you're invested into half of it. Right. And they still seem to kind of keep a couple of good tracks for the record. Yeah. So, I think that, and so you don't just get all I got the new record and I've listened to it 5 times and I'm already over it. You build anticipation. Smart way to do it. Yeah, you build anticipation and you kind of keep. I always joke that I think that their last album was my album of the year for 2023 and 2024 because of the way that they released everything. But yeah, man.
I feel like whenever I see albums get critiqued or reviewed, I always feel like the big sticking point, and maybe it's just the sites that I'm going to, is the length. Too many songs. This went on for too long. Everybody seems to want everything, and maybe that's just a sign of the times of how society is. It's a quick clips. It's a TikTok world nowadays. You know what I mean? People aren't diving into your deep cuts maybe anymore. You know what I mean? They're picking, geez, I like track 1 and I like track 5, and the hell with the rest of the album. You know what I mean? But I mean, I don't know. Is that the way people? I mean, does a full length album even make sense anymore?
I don't know. I think that if we did anything, it'd probably be something that's shorter, just to kind of test the waters, see if people want new Primer 55 music, just to see what's going on. But I mean, I think that even as a kid, you would hear something and you would go buy buy the whole record for the one song, and the one
Right.
song is the only good song of the record. You've
Right.
wasted $12 on a full
Right.
album for
Yeah.
the stuff that you don't want. So I think the numbers, if they're not fudging the numbers, but I think the numbers on Spotify are more accurate to how people's listening habits.
But I think what you're mentioning with with Memphis Mayfire's doing, though, I think is very smart, though, man, because I think that is a way to get those deep cuts listened to, though, man, because you are kind of spoon feeding the album to people, and they are going to say, I'm at least going to listen to this track. It might not be one that I'll go back to, but I'm going to listen to it because it keeps coming out, and this is the album that this is pretty much the album being released to us.
Yeah,
that's smart.
There's so many albums now that every song has a video, or at least a visualizer, and they have an actual video of this and of that. It's, you gotta have your YouTube, and you gotta have your Spotify, you gotta have your this and your that, and it's definitely a different world from what we did back in the day. But yeah, I'm excited just to kind of see where we fit in with all this stuff.
Now, if you could book your dream guests, if there's one or two guests out there that you'd love to have on the podcast, is there anybody out there that's on a wish list? Yeah, maybe they're not even attainable, but I mean, is there anybody out there you'd love to have a conversation with?
I mean, really, like, I've had a ton of my heroes on the podcast. It kind of always comes, Rexx Brown, just because kind of get the other Pantera guy. Anybody like Hetfield or Ulrich, that obviously that you can't go wrong there.
Right.
I did interview Jason Newsted. That was kind of a wild day for me because, he just pops up on the screen and I'm like, oh shit, that's fucking Jason Newsted right there.
I know.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of those people probably, I don't think I've had anybody from Kiss on. So I mean, guests like that, like it's kind of the, would I get a great interview out of Gene Simmons? Probably not, but
right.
it would be fun to have him on the show.
And you might have to pay him too.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that Gene does much stuff for free.
Yeah. I remember I had one guest, I reached out to one person and they said that they would do the podcast for like $40. I was like, I'm not giving you $40.
Yeah.
And that was after I interviewed Jason Newsted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had bigger guests on than you. Like, I'm not paying you $40 to come on my podcast.
Which Jason Newsted would do it for me though, man, because he is easily probably, my single most favorite guy that's ever been, a part of Metallica.
Oh yeah. Like he is always, such a fan favorite, and he was kind of like the fan of the band that was in the band.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's a point in time, man, like when Metallica went through what maybe their fans would say, they're the weakest period of the band. I always feel like Jason was still kind of keeping the grit,
he tried to.
Yeah, he was kind of like the guy who was kind of like still keeping their metal integrity somewhat, even when they were going a bit soft. According to fans, I don't know. Maybe some fans like the softer stuff or whatever, man. But I think the diehards, obviously, there's a period there that I think fans would look at as a hiccup in their career, a few albums. But
I mean, there's still a generation of fans that you talk to, and they came into Metallica on Death Magnetic, or they came into Metallica on Load, or or they came into Metallica on Saint Anger. So you've got and which is not, I mean, I came into Metallica on Black Album. Like I was 12 when that album came out. And even then people were like, if you like this album, you're a poser,
right.
So, it's such a cool album. But I mean, the one thing that was nice about that was when I got into Metallica, I had 4 other records I could go back to and like just really dive into and, kind of see the progression of the band. And honestly, some of my favorite Metallica to go back to is like Garage Inc. Like they're like Metallica's like the greatest cover band of all time.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And of course, if you're a bass player, man, it's a shame that you don't have more of Cliff Burton to study. You've only got the albums that are there, or whatever, man. But what albums they are, amazing.
Oh yeah,
I mean.
Oh yeah,
that's why I feel like that's why I've had this discussion with other guys from bands on here, though, man. It still seems like for all the success they've attained, though, man, Metallica are still a band that people love to shit on, though.
Yeah, I mean, well. Everybody shits on anything that becomes popular. As soon as it becomes popular, like everybody's like, oh well, they just immediately shit on it. Like you could be the heaviest band ever, and Yep, but once you become popular, it's like, oh, these guys sold out. Like.
And as an artist, it must be extremely tough, though, man, because you really are damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If Metallica keeps on churning out, a replica of Master of Puppets, and they keep making that album all the time, people are going to say, these guys never grow. But then the minute they change lanes a little bit, then everyone shits on them for losing their authenticity. You know what I mean? And it's not just like Metallica. I feel like that's kind of symptomatic of all bands.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the one quote I like by Newstead was, he's like, they always said that we sold out or whatever. He's like, yeah, we sold out every seat in the arena every night.
Right.
Like,
he's right.
That whole thing. But yeah, it's it's definitely damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it's, you just have to stay true to yourself. And if, Metallica was, if they veered and wanted to be more like Corrosion Conformity, then, let them do that. Or, like Load and Reload is a little bit more Southern rocky but at least they didn't, they would never have became as popular if they continued to do Injustice for All over and over and over,
Right. And I think metalheads also have to, you certainly have to give them their flowers, though, man. Like they kicked down the door for so many bands, though. I think a lot of people don't want to go back and give them the credit that they're, you could shit on them, but the bands that you're currently listening to probably aren't here if not for them.
Right. Another band that I found over the years that I'm not a big fan of, but a lot of younger bands, even like, people in like Carnifex and super heavy deathcore. Yeah. The one band that always comes up is Linkin Park. Like Linkin Park was a gateway band for so many people. Yeah. That it's wild how many people bought Hybrid Theory and then, then they got a guitar or a bass or drums, and then they veer off and, then they get into heavier stuff. And I even remember somebody asked Kerry King a long time ago about Disturbed and Godsmack. And he's like, I'm not going to shit on those bands because once those kids start getting into Disturbed, then they're going to want something heavier and they're going to come straight to Slayer Town, because
that's true.
And that's how it happened. I mean, I got into Metallica, through the Black Album, got into the past catalog. And then I was like, well, I want to hear more stuff like this. Oh, here's Megadeth. Oh, here's Slayer. And then somehow I immediately went to like Cannibal Corpse and Deicide and Morbid Angel, and then some veered off into new metal. And just, I've always joked that my podcast list is like my CD collection come to life, So like 1 week I'll have Wes Borland, and 1 week I'll have Glenn Benton of Deicide, or some of the guys in Obituary. But I love all of these bands. Like I've never wanted to just be the new metal guy. I'm like I might be able to talk Limp Bizkit and Deftones, but I can also, I also love, crazy old death metal or something like that.
I do too. Yeah, I do. It's funny that Deicide has come up in this conversation because I've checked my phone a couple times, man, because I'm supposed to have, and it doesn't look like he's going to make it because Deicide is currently in Brazil right now, but he's the new guitar player. He's also in Ex Mortis.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So Ex Mortis is a great thrash band, but apparently he's the new guitar player in Deicide as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I've interviewed Glenn, I think twice. And then the last time they came through town, like I just hit the publicist up. I was like, I don't want to interview. I just want a photo. And like he came out and he was like, oh, it's you. And, again, Link got the photo with him. But, I just, because he made some remarks about Corey Taylor on my podcast that kind of went like crazy viral.
Yeah.
He called him a homophobic slur and then, said some other shit about him. So, and it was funny. So every time he sees my name pop up, he's like, oh, it's you. But,
well, I've been kind enough to have, or I've been fortunate enough, I should say, man. Blabbermouth has been kind enough to grab some of mine too, man. And it definitely helps the viewers and the subscribers though, man. You know what I mean? Like when they put a link up and they cover your, your podcast, it does help, man. It really helps you gain traction. And, it certainly sends people your way. And in the world of podcasting, man, you appreciate anybody that they can send your way. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people with the ability to podcast nowadays. So I obviously, there's plenty of competition out there.
Yeah. It's competition, but at the same time, I think it's there are a lot of ears out there and there are a lot of different takes and a lot of hours in the day, and it's funny, even like my personal podcast listening habits. Like there'll be days where I run out of stuff to listen to. I'm just like, and I listen to a lot. But you get to the weekend and you're like, oh shit, there's nothing else to listen to. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of hours in the day, a lot of ears out there, and even being at Louder Than Life this weekend, I think the peak day was like 80,000 people, and I think they posted 250,000 people over the weekend.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And you look around and you're like, how do I get these people to listen to my show? Like,
right.
there's so many people, there's so many fans of hard rock, metal that are there, and you're like, where's the connection at? Because even some of the biggest podcasts or the biggest channels out there, like, that's a crazy number. Like, I mean, Brian from Rockfeed just hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and he actually came up during the Louder Than Life pre-party. I invited him out and had him come up and sing a song with us. But I was just talking to him and just walking his dog, and the amount of people that stopped him, and got a photo with him because they check out his content daily, and things like that. Like, so there are eyes and ears out there everywhere, and it's like every city, Slipknot will come through town and 18,000 people are going to the show, and you're like, how do you reach all those people, because they could be fans of your podcast, and you're just like, you just got to get to them.
I imagine with Primer 55 though, man, getting back up and rolling again though, man, it's kind of it's kind of going to be a dual purpose thing. It's definitely going to drive, I think, more eyes and ears to your podcast, though.
Yeah, I should just wear a Talk To Me shirt every night.
You probably should. Yeah. Just go the whole human billboard route. You know what I mean? At this point,
go up to the mic, like, "What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show." Like, hit them with the podcast intro. But yeah, I mean, it'll be cool. I mean, the one thing I think Primer has brought a lot of people to the podcast, but it's also funny how many people that I know that may or may not be Primer fans are coming out because they're going to be able to hang out. That sounds really weird, but be able to see me in person,
sure,
and like and just kind of hang out and stuff. And I've been doing selling a bass package, like a stage play bass package, and it's funny the amount of people that I know that are like Primer fans, but also fans of the podcast, and they're actually like. I didn't really want to do it at first because I'm like, who am I to sell a bass package? That's a Gene Simmons, that's a Chris Gale, that's a David Ellefson kind of type level thing. But I did the math and I'm like, well, if I sell a couple of tour, that's a huge chunk of money that kind of pay the bills and stuff, and kind of can make it make sense to kind of keep touring and stuff. So but yeah, and then I posted about it. I posted a couple times about it, and a couple have already sold. And I'm like, all right, well, if you guys really want to pay me for my bass, you can have it.
Yeah.
But so it's been fun, man. I think I said this at the end of last year to my wife. I was like, 2025 is 10 years of the podcast. I was like, it's just like, where do you go from here? And I'm like, I was like, I think I'm gonna wind everything down. I was like, September, whatever is like the 10-year anniversary of the podcast. And I was like, I'll just, kind of get to September and, go out to Grays or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the Elleson Show pops up. Then Primer 55 pops up, and I was just like, I'm busier now than I've ever been in my life.
Sure.
I tried to quit. I tried to stop.
Yeah.
like, get me out of here.
I've had a couple points in time, man, the like where it was hard running down guests, and I'm trying to swim both ends of the pool and do 2 podcasts and get boxers and people from the fight game on here and musicians. I've gotten disheartened a couple times, man, like where you don't see the numbers immediately and you start to think, oh God, is anybody watching this? Is anybody going to subscribe? And then I check the analytics, and it's not growing leaps and bounds, man. But I'm always trending upwards, at least, man. Yeah. So that gives me some hope. You know what I mean? Like the little engine that could. I'm chugging along. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not getting tens of thousands of new subscribers every day or every week or whatever. But I always see growth at the end of the day. Yeah,
and the one thing that people need to realize, and I should maybe even be better at this too, is just leave a good, nice message, and that'll get that means so much, almost so much more than like money. Like it's like just leave it, like, send a DM. Hey man, really enjoyed this episode.
Yep.
Or comment on the Twitter, comment on the Instagram, comment on the Facebook page. Like, and that's a currency that you don't have to pay for. And, and it means a lot, because there have been times where you're like, I think I'm just going to stop. And then
Yeah.
you'll get a message like, hey man, I really enjoyed this podcast. You know, it really gets me through my Tuesdays or something like that. And
Yep.
you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll keep doing it. And there have been so many times where if I just make it to Louder Than Life, if I just make it to rock, like when I used to go to Rock and Pod, stuff like that, like the conventions, like just get there. All right, just get to the 5-year anniversary. You know, there's always like these little goals to keep going, and like you get there and you're like, all right, I made it to this, and what's the next thing? You know, just trying to keep trudging along. But yeah, and then like I said, you know, 10 years is this year. I'm like, all right, well, I just hit 10 years. I'm like, all right, well, what now? Like, you know,
Right.
Got to keep it going. So,
Well,
and then the nice.
Plus we come from an era, and we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, Joe Rogan does long form, free form conversation too, but we do come from an era, man, where people actually communicated like this. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, I sometimes do it just because I get a kick out of not so much monetizing it. I have a day job. I work in healthcare, so I'm not worried about making a living from podcasting. Just, you know, just look back and be like, wow, I had these hundreds of conversations with people that I really admired and respected, man. You know, I mean, you know, who were really, you know, who really resonate with me. Maybe they're not the biggest musicians in the world, but they were at one point in time, you know, and still are, you know, big to me, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like they're the fabric of who I am, you know?
Yeah. And even people are like, who is some of your favorite guests that have been on the podcast? And I'm like, you would think it was the biggest guest. And sometimes it's like, I had you know, do some Carcass on the podcast, and that was like, you know, that made me nervous, you know, having those guys on or something, things like that. And I'm sure you're the same way. You're so focused on the next episode that you don't really think about the past until you like have to go and look for something or kind of scroll through your guests, and you're like, wow, actually, there are really a lot of crazy guests on this podcast. You know? Yeah. And you don't realize how. You know, you don't see the forest for the trees or whatever metaphor you want to use, but you're so focused on the next episode that you don't live in the past with those episodes.
Stop and appreciate who you just had a conversation with, and really let the gravity of it kind of wash over you. Listen, man, you've been so generous with your time. I can't believe that 2+ hours have flown by like this, man. This is really an amazing episode, man. But before I let you out of here, man, you know, I certainly want you to promote, man. So if people want to tap into what you're doing, man, you know, I obviously your podcast is on YouTube.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to you know, Talk Toomey on YouTube, or the David Ellefson Show just comes out through David Ellefson's channel, or you know, the David Ellefson Show on the podcast. Primary 55. You know, we've got, like I said, you know, a couple of months worth of dates coming up, and then you know, some big news coming, however you want to do that. You know, some big shows to be announced soon with that. So, you know, if you're a fan of what I do and want to support other ways, you know, there's stage play bass packages and all that stuff too. So yeah, it's just you know, just Google and you'll find me, and I'm around.
You're out there on all the socials, Instagram, all that stuff, right?
Yeah. You can always find me on those. What question for you? What part of New York? What city are you in New York?
Oh, I'm in upstate. I'm in a small town, but usually I tell people that the biggest, you know, the biggest city that I'm closest to would be Syracuse.
Okay, my wife is from Watertown, so.
So that's probably about that's probably about you know, probably between an hour and a half away from me. So yeah, because I always tell people, man, as soon as I tell people that I'm from New York, they instantly want to know what borough. You know, they can't understand they can't understand there's any other part of New York other than the city. You know what I mean? And I'm like central New York, so I'm smack dab in the middle of the state. So I'm 4 hours from what people think of when they think of New York. You know, the Empire State Building and Brooklyn, and you know what I mean, like all the stuff people associate. They don't seem to realize that there's a whole other part of the state that's not New York City.
She's from up there, so like she had to go, like her parents are big like Bills fans, and like Buffalo, you know, Syracuse, Orange, you know, like basketball and stuff like that. So
that's right in my that's right in my backyard. Yeah,
there we go. Well, cool, man.
Yeah, but I appreciate this, man. This was a blast and a great conversation, man. And I appreciate you again being so generous with your time, man. And stay in touch, man. We'll definitely do this again, especially when the primer stuff, the announcements get made and everything gets rolling, dude. I'd love to have you back on, man.
Absolutely. It'll be a good time. All right, man.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Josh. Thanks, buddy.
Right.
Good talking to you, man.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. And there he goes, folks. An epic conversation, I will say, being as at the fact that we went 2+ hours, and I ain't done that in a long time. I don't know when I went 2+ hours. Maybe shout out Rude Boy Remington. I don't know. I haven't gone like that in a while, man, but it felt good. And when you're in the midst of a great conversation, man, like I said before, you roll with it. So big shout out to Josh Toomey. Check out Primer 55. Now getting back in the swing of things in terms of getting out there, playing shows. You heard him say potentially new music coming. That sounds like that's going to happen. Of course, co-host of a podcast with the legendary Dave Ellefson, plus his own podcast, Talk Toomey Podcast, where he does very much what I do, maybe on a little grander scale because he's got inroads to people in the music business. But, you know, having people from the music industry on, man, flying the flag for rock, metal, extreme metal, you know, just having people from that community on, you know, embracing the same community that here on PodScum we embrace. So again, and I love what he said, man, about being a fan first. You know, I mean, I get giddy, if I can use that word, not get my metalhead card pulled. I get giddy when some of these guests come on here myself, man. At the end of the day, I'm a fan, and you listen, that's what it's all about right there, man. Just, you know, being a fan and doing what you can to lift up the community that you're a fan of. I love rock. I love metal. I love extreme metal. And I'm going to fly the flag. And if that means having a platform and allowing people to come on and promote their projects, talk about their journey, I'm all about that. It's what I do on Off the Couch Boxing. It's what I do on PodScum. And it's what I will continue to do regardless of success or analytics or statistics or you know, financial, any of that stuff. I'm here to sink my teeth into amazing conversations like I just had, get to know people, and try to lift up, you know, the two worlds that I'm passionate about, i.e. boxing and rock and roll. So that's what we do here, man. And glad to have Josh Toomey on and have him be a part of it, and add him to the stellar list of amazing episodes that I feel like PodScum has already done. So chalk up another one. We just did our thing for 2+ hours, man. So shout out to Josh Toomey for hanging with me for that long, man. Really enjoyed it. And if you dig podcasts, go check out his Talk Toomey podcast, as well as co-hosting the Dave Ellefson Show. Listen, how can you go wrong, man? When you're co-hosting a show with the legendary Dave Ellefson of Megadeth, you're doing something right, man. So shout out to Josh, and great to see things falling into place for him, man. Super happy that Primer 55 is back in full swing again. So wish him well on wherever that band goes. It sounds like it's starting out with some live shows, and sounds like the next logical step will be get some new music made. So super happy for them, and just super happy to have had that conversation, that opportunity to have Josh on and chop it up with him. So now I'll go into pimp mode. The pimp hand's feeling strong. Here we go. Make sure to tap into PodScum on Facebook. The Facebook page is Off the Couch Boxing and PodScum, both of my shows, one Facebook page. That's where you'll get your information on what's doing, who's coming on, when the episodes are dropping, so on and so forth. And of course, check us out on Instagram. Your boy is trying to be a little more active on there. I'm doing what I can, folks. I'm 52 years old. This technology, it ain't my era, but I'm trying. So I am adding more videos, more shorts, more reels, whatever the kids are calling them these days. So check us out. Same tag, Off the Couch Boxing and PodScum on Instagram. And of course, if you're watching right now, please like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell to stay tapped in, because what we do here is just kick it and have amazing, real conversations like we just had right there. We move all around the board with it. Never know where we're going to go. Obviously, we're going to keep our focus on boxing and music, but we like to venture off. That's what your boy Reckless Rex likes to do, man. So, you know, we'll chop it up about anything and everything, and that's what makes for an interesting podcast. And I think that's why you guys tap in, man. So I appreciate each and every one of you, all the viewers, all the subscribers, and of course the guests who, without whom I would not be able to do this, man. So another great episode in the books. Make sure to stay tapped in with us, man. This is your boy Reckless Rex reminding you to take it easy and keep it sleazy.